Last year, I opened the chest of a man in his late 60s, and what I saw stayed with me. His arteries looked stiff, thick, and tired. Not like healthy blood vessels that can stretch and move with each heartbeat. They looked worn down, as if they had been carrying pressure for far too long. He was not careless. He was not lazy. He was not the kind of person who ignored his health. He took his blood pressure medicine every day. He went to his appointments. He followed instructions. He tried to do the right thing. And still, his blood pressure remained dangerously high. That is the part many people never talk about. Because for millions of older adults, high blood pressure is not just about forgetting a pill, or eating one salty meal, or having a stressful day. It is often something much quieter, much deeper, and much more constant. It builds slowly. It hides in your blood vessels. It puts pressure on your heart. And over time, it can raise your risk of stroke, heart attack, kidney damage, memory problems, and serious fatigue. What makes this even more frustrating is that many people feel they are doing their best, but their numbers still do not improve the way they hoped. If that sounds familiar, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not imagining it. You are not failing, and you are not out of options. Because sometimes, the missing piece is not more effort. Sometimes, it is understanding what your body is really reacting to every single day, right in your own kitchen. The truth is, some of the foods and habits that seem harmless can quietly increase pressure inside your blood vessels. At the same time, some very simple choices can help your arteries relax, reduce strain on your heart, and support healthier blood pressure in a natural, steady way. Not overnight magic, not a cure, not a replacement for your doctor or your medication, but real support, the kind of support that works with your body instead of against it. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 simple food-based habits that may help lower pressure inside your blood vessels, calm silent inflammation, and make it easier for your heart to do its job. These are not complicated changes. They do not require expensive products, and you do not need to be perfect. You just need to understand what matters most and start with one step. Because even after 60, 70, or 80, your body can still respond. Your blood vessels can still benefit. And tonight, you can begin. As we get older, blood pressure often becomes harder to control, even when a person is trying to do many things right. That can feel confusing and sometimes even discouraging, but there is a reason for it. Inside the body, the blood vessels do not stay the same forever. With age, they begin to change. They become thicker. They become stiffer. And once that happens, the heart has to push harder to move blood forward. That extra force shows up as higher blood pressure. This is one reason high blood pressure becomes so common later in life, even in people who feel fine and believe they are living reasonably well. Think of your arteries like a garden hose. When the hose is new, it is soft and flexible. Water moves through it with less resistance. But if that hose becomes hard and less able to bend, pressure builds much more easily. That is very close to what happens inside aging blood vessels. When the heart beats, healthy arteries can absorb part of that force. But stiff arteries cannot cushion the pressure the same way, so the top blood pressure number often starts rising first. In older adults, this pattern is very common, and it is one reason blood pressure can look more stubborn after 60. There is another important piece many people do not realize. High blood pressure is often silent. It usually does not come with a clear warning sign. You may not feel pain. You may not feel pressure. You may not feel anything unusual at all. And yet, day after day, that force can still be damaging the delicate lining of your arteries. Over time, uncontrolled blood pressure can affect the heart, the brain, the kidneys, and even memory and thinking. That is why so many people are shocked when they hear their numbers are high. They were waiting to feel sick first, but high blood pressure often does not work that way, and age is only part of the story. As the years go by, the body can also become more sensitive to salt, less resilient to poor sleep, and more affected by stress, inactivity, extra weight, and certain health conditions. Some medicines can even make blood pressure harder to manage. So when someone says, "I do not understand why my blood pressure is still high," the answer is often not just one thing. It is the combination of aging blood vessels, daily habits, and the way the body handles fluid, hormones, and circulation over time. But here is the encouraging part. No matter your age, there are still steps you can take each day to help your numbers move in a healthier direction. That matters because lowering blood pressure helps reduce the strain on your heart and lowers your risk of serious problems like heart disease and stroke. And this is exactly why food matters so much. What you eat does not just affect your weight, it affects your blood vessels, your inflammation levels, your blood sugar response, and the pressure your heart must fight against. So, before we talk about medicine, fear, or worst-case scenarios, we need to talk about what happens at the table, one meal at a time. Let us start with the simplest habit of all. Before you change what you eat, try changing the order in which you eat it. At your next meal, eat the vegetables first, not after the meat, not after the bread, not after the rice, the potatoes, or the pasta. First. That may sound too small to matter, but sometimes the smallest changes are the ones the body notices most. Here is why. When you begin a meal with vegetables, especially non-starchy vegetables like leafy greens, broccoli, green beans, cucumbers, cabbage, or peppers, you give your body fiber first. Fiber slows down how quickly the rest of the meal moves through digestion. That means sugar from the starches and other carbohydrates enters the bloodstream more gradually, instead of all at once. And that matters more than many people realize. Because when blood sugar rises too quickly after a meal, the body usually answers with a larger insulin response. Over time, those repeated spikes can create more stress inside the system. For many older adults, that can mean more strain on blood vessels, more energy crashes after eating, and more difficulty keeping blood pressure and blood sugar in a healthy range. But when vegetables come first, the rise after the meal is often gentler. The body does not have to react as sharply, and your blood vessels may not be pushed as hard in those hours after eating. This is one reason meal order has gained so much attention in nutrition research. Studies have found that when vegetables and protein are eaten before carbohydrates, blood sugar and insulin levels after the meal can be significantly lower than when carbohydrates are eaten first. That does not mean vegetables are a magic fix. It means the sequence of a meal can shape how your body handles it. And I want to emphasize something important here. This habit does not ask you to give up everything you enjoy. You do not have to stop eating bread forever. You do not have to throw away every potato in the kitchen. You do not have to make every dinner perfect. You simply begin differently. A few bites of vegetables first, then your protein, then the starches. That is all. For many people over 60, that feels far more realistic than a strict diet, and that is exactly why it can work. Simple habits are easier to repeat, and the habits you repeat are the ones that change your health. So tonight, when you sit down to eat, pause for a moment before your first bite. Look at your plate, and ask yourself one small question. Can I eat the vegetables first? If the answer is yes, then you have already begun. Now let us talk about something that gets a lot of attention, but is often explained the wrong way. Apple cider vinegar. Some people talk about it as if it is a miracle. It is not. Others dismiss it completely. That is not quite right either. The truth is more modest and more useful. In small, diluted amounts, apple cider vinegar may help reduce the rise in blood sugar and insulin after a carbohydrate-rich meal. That effect has been seen in small human studies, especially when vinegar is taken with or before a meal that contains bread, starch, or other carbohydrates. Why does that matter in a video about blood pressure? Because for many older adults, the body does not handle sugar as smoothly as it once did. After a meal, blood sugar can rise faster, insulin can surge harder, and the whole system can feel more stressed. Over time, those repeated swings may work against metabolic health, appetite control, and the health of blood vessels. Apple cider vinegar is not a blood pressure medicine, but if it helps soften that after-meal spike even a little, it may become one small part of a more heart-friendly routine. Here is the key though. More is not better, and straight vinegar is not the goal. If your doctor says it is appropriate for you, the safer way to try it is in a small diluted amount with food. Think of it as a gentle helper, not a treatment. A practical place to start is a small amount mixed into a large glass of water, or used in a salad dressing with a meal, rather than taken straight like a shot. Mayo Clinic notes that small amounts are generally tolerated by many people, but apple cider vinegar is highly acidic and can irritate the throat. And this is where many people need to be careful. If you have acid reflux, a history of ulcers, a sensitive throat, or dental problems, apple cider vinegar may not be a good fit for you. Acidic drinks can wear down tooth enamel over time, and frequent acid exposure is a known risk factor for dental erosion. That is one reason drinking it straight, sipping it slowly for long periods, or using too much is a bad idea. There is one more caution that matters, especially for older adults. Apple cider vinegar can affect some medicines and supplements. Mayo Clinic specifically notes possible interactions with insulin, some diabetes medicines, and diuretics, which are common in people with blood pressure or heart-related conditions. In some cases, this can contribute to potassium dropping too low. That is why this should always be treated as something to discuss with your clinician if you take regular medication. So the real message is simple. Apple cider vinegar is not magic. It is not for everyone. But for some people, used carefully, in a diluted form, and with a meal, it may modestly support a steadier blood sugar response. And sometimes, when you are trying to protect the heart and blood vessels, steady is exactly what the body needs. There is one part of blood pressure that many people never think about. What happens while you are asleep? In a healthy pattern, blood pressure usually drops during the night. Doctors sometimes call this dipping. It is one of the ways the body gives the heart and blood vessels a chance to rest. But in many older adults, that natural drop becomes smaller, or it does not happen the way it should. And when that happens, the heart may be working harder through the night than most people realize. Non-dipping patterns and nighttime high blood pressure are linked with higher cardiovascular risk, and they are often missed unless blood pressure is checked over a full 24 hours. That matters because a person can wake up, check blood pressure in the morning, and still have no idea what happened during the night. Everything may look fine on the surface, but underneath, the body may not be getting the quiet recovery it needs. This is one reason sleep, evening habits, and late-day food choices deserve more attention than they usually get. Now, this is where walnuts can become interesting. Not because walnuts are some kind of nighttime medicine, and not because they fix blood pressure by themselves, but because they are one of the most heart-friendly foods you can add to a daily routine. Walnuts are rich in plant omega-3 fat. They also provide fiber, minerals, and compounds that support vascular health. The American Heart Association notes that walnuts are especially high in omega-3 fatty acids, and research has linked omega-3 intake with lower blood pressure and better heart health overall. There is also research specifically on walnuts in older adults. In one randomized trial with older participants, walnut consumption helped reduce systolic blood pressure and improved overall blood pressure regulation, especially in those who started with higher readings. That does not mean every person will get the same result, but it does tell us walnuts are more than just a snack. They can be part of a blood pressure-friendly eating pattern. So how should you use them in a practical way? Think small, think simple, think consistent. A modest portion of unsalted walnuts in the evening can be a better choice than cookies, chips, or salty processed snacks. It gives the body nourishing fats instead of extra sodium, sugar, and empty calories. And for many people, that one swap alone may support a steadier night. The American Heart Association describes a serving of nuts as a small handful, about 1 ounce. Now, I do want to be careful here. If you deal with reflux, indigestion, or discomfort when eating late, do not force yourself to eat right before bed. In that case, have the walnuts earlier in the evening instead of right before lying down. The goal is not to overload digestion at night. The goal is to choose a calmer, heart-smarter evening habit. So tonight, here is the simple takeaway. If you usually reach for something salty, sugary, or heavily processed in the evening, replace it with a small handful of unsalted walnuts, not as a miracle, not as a cure, but as one gentle signal to your body that the day is winding down and your heart deserves a little less stress, not a little more. Now let us talk about a drink that feels gentle, simple, and almost old-fashioned. Hibiscus tea. It is bright, tart, and refreshing. Some people enjoy it hot, others prefer it cold, and for many older adults, it can feel easier to add 1 cup of tea to the day than to make a dramatic change to every meal. That matters, because the habits that last are usually the habits that feel realistic, and hibiscus tea may be one of those habits. Research suggests that hibiscus may help lower blood pressure modestly in some adults, especially people whose numbers are already a little high. In one well-known randomized trial, people with pre-hypertension or mild hypertension who drank 3 cups a day had a greater drop in systolic blood pressure than the placebo group over 6 weeks. A later systematic review and meta-analysis also found that hibiscus lowered blood pressure more than placebo, although the overall evidence is still limited and the results vary across studies. That means hibiscus tea is not a miracle. It is not a replacement for medication, and it is not something to think of as stronger than your doctor's treatment plan. But it may be a useful support, a small, steady support. And sometimes that is exactly what helps a routine become sustainable. One of the most important things to understand is this. When people hear that something is natural, they often assume it must be harmless or powerful enough to do the whole job by itself. Neither assumption is safe. The National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health says hibiscus may help reduce blood pressure, but the effect is small, and no dietary supplement has been shown to work like blood pressure medicine. So how can someone use hibiscus tea in a practical way? Think of it as a daily ritual, not a rescue plan. 1 cup in the morning, 1 cup in the afternoon, 1 cup in the evening if it fits your routine. No need to overload it with sugar. If you make it very sweet, you start working against the same heart-healthy goal you are trying to support. A lightly flavored tea is better than turning it into a sugary drink. The goal is not just to drink hibiscus. The goal is to make the whole habit more supportive for your blood vessels. And here is the part I want older viewers to hear very clearly. If you already take blood pressure medication, or if your numbers sometimes run low, do not treat hibiscus tea like a casual experiment. Talk with your doctor or pharmacist first. NCCIH advises people with high blood pressure not to replace prescribed care with unproven products, and to discuss complementary approaches with their healthcare provider, especially because supplements and food-based products can interact with treatment plans. So the message here is calm and simple. Hibiscus tea may help, not dramatically, not instantly, but modestly, gently, and in a way that can fit into real life. And for many people over 60, that is the kind of support that is easiest to keep. A warm cup, a steady habit, a small step that your heart may appreciate more than you think. Now we need to talk about something many people overlook, the oil in your kitchen. Because the fat you cook with does matter, but maybe not in the way you have heard online. A lot of people are being told that all seed oils are dangerous, that omega-6 is automatically inflammatory, and that switching back to butter, lard, or beef fat is somehow better for the heart. That message is popular, but it does not match what major heart health organizations and nutrition researchers say. The American Heart Association continues to recommend replacing saturated fats with unsaturated fats, and both the American Heart Association and Harvard experts say the idea that omega-6 fats automatically drive inflammation in humans is not supported by the overall evidence. So what is the real concern? Usually, it is not a small amount of plant oil used sensibly in home cooking. The bigger problem is the overall pattern. Too many fried foods, too many ultra-processed foods, too many meals built around convenience instead of whole ingredients, and too much saturated fat used regularly in place of healthier, unsaturated fats. The latest American Heart Association dietary guidance emphasizes minimally processed foods and replacing saturated fats with healthier, unsaturated sources, while also advising people to limit high-fat animal fats such as butter, lard, and tallow because of their link to cardiovascular risk. This is where the conversation gets important for older adults, because when blood vessels are already less flexible, the goal is not to make meals heavier and more inflammatory. The goal is to reduce strain, to support healthier cholesterol levels, and to make daily eating a little kinder to the arteries. That is one reason extra virgin olive oil stands out so often in heart research. It is rich in monounsaturated fat, and research reviews continue to link olive oil intake with better cardiovascular outcomes. It is not the only acceptable oil, but it is one of the best studied choices for heart health. At the same time, there is no strong reason to fear every bottle of canola or soybean oil in a home kitchen. Used in a normal way, these oils provide unsaturated fats that heart guidelines still consider preferable to saturated fats. The evidence does not support the idea that they are inherently toxic simply because they contain omega-6. What deserves more caution is frequent frying, especially repeated high-heat frying and heavily fried restaurant food. Research reviews and cohort studies link frequent fried food intake with worse cardiovascular outcomes, and Harvard notes that repeatedly heating oils to high temperatures can create harmful compounds. So, here's the practical takeaway. For everyday meals, use extra virgin olive oil often, especially for dressings, vegetables, beans, fish, and gentle to moderate heat cooking. Cut back on deep-fried foods. Do not reuse cooking oil over and over. And do not assume that butter is a heart-healthy upgrade just because social media says it is more natural. The American Heart Association still recommends limiting saturated fat, including butter, because replacing it with unsaturated fats is better for cardiovascular health. So, if you want to protect your blood vessels, do not panic over one bottle in the pantry. Look at the bigger picture. Less frying, less processed food, more whole meals, and a smarter choice of fats day after day. At first glance, these 5 habits may seem unrelated. Vegetables first. A small, careful use of apple cider vinegar. A handful of walnuts in the evening. Hibiscus tea, and smarter cooking fats. They sound like separate tips, but underneath, they are all moving the body in the same general direction. They help reduce sudden metabolic stress after meals, support healthier blood vessel function, and create a more stable daily pattern for the heart to live with. That matters because high blood pressure is not usually caused by one dramatic event. More often, it is shaped by what happens again and again, meal after meal, day after day. That is the part many people miss. The body does not always need something extreme. It often responds best to something steady. A meal that does not send blood sugar soaring. A snack that does not load the body with salt and processed fat late at night. A drink that may gently support blood pressure instead of adding sugar. A fat choice that fits better with heart-healthy eating patterns. These are not flashy interventions, but over time, small, repeated changes can improve how easily blood flows through the arteries and small vessels that feed the heart and other organs. NHLBI notes that dietary changes can improve blood flow through the main arteries and tiny vessels, and DASH-style eating patterns have been shown to lower blood pressure within weeks. There is another connection, too. Many of these habits fit naturally into eating patterns that are already linked with better heart outcomes. More vegetables, more fiber, more nuts, better fat quality, less reliance on heavily processed foods. That is not just a theory. Major heart health guidance keeps returning to the same idea. When daily eating becomes more plant-forward, less processed, and more balanced, blood pressure and overall cardiovascular risk tend to move in a better direction. And this is exactly why none of these habits should be viewed as a replacement for medication. They are support. They are the background conditions that make the body's job easier. Your doctor treats the problem directly. Your daily habits help shape the environment that problem lives in. And when both are working together, the results are often better than either one alone. That is why heart and blood pressure guidelines continue to pair medical treatment with lifestyle change, not one instead of the other. So if you remember only one thing from this part, let it be this. These 5 habits work best, not because they are dramatic. They work because they all send the body the same quiet message. Less strain, more stability, better support for the blood vessels that carry every heartbeat through your life. Now here is the most important part. Do not try to change everything tonight. That is where many good intentions fall apart. A person hears 5 helpful ideas, feels motivated for one evening, then tries to become a completely different person by tomorrow morning. A new breakfast, a new shopping list, a new tea, a new snack, a new oil, a new routine. And within a week, the whole thing feels tiring, complicated, and impossible to maintain. That is not failure. That is just what happens when change is too big to repeat. The better way is smaller, calmer, more realistic. Choose one habit first, just one. If eating vegetables first feels easiest, start there. If replacing your evening snack with walnuts feels simple, do that. If you want to begin with hibiscus tea, begin there. If the easiest step is checking the oil in your kitchen before your next grocery trip, that counts too. What matters most is not how impressive the first step looks. What matters is whether you can do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Because blood pressure is not shaped by one perfect decision. It is shaped by patterns. That is why major heart health guidance keeps coming back to the same message. Healthy blood pressure is supported by everyday habits, and even small steps, repeated over time, can help move your heart health in a better direction. I want to say something especially to those of you who are over 60 and may be thinking, I should have started this years ago. Maybe so, but that does not mean starting now has no value. It does. Your body still responds to better conditions. Your blood vessels still respond to less strain. Your heart still benefits when meals become a little lighter, a little steadier, and a little more supportive. So please, do not measure progress by whether you did all 5 things at once. Measure progress by whether you began. One habit, one repeated choice, one less harmful pattern in your day. That is how real change starts, and that is also how real change lasts. Lifestyle changes remain part of standard blood pressure care, alongside working with your healthcare team and taking medicines as directed when they are prescribed. Before this video ends, I want to leave you with one simple thought. Your heart has been working for you every minute of your life, while you were sleeping, while you were worrying, while you were raising a family, while you were carrying stress no one else could see. It kept going. And now, even at this stage of life, it is still worth protecting. Not with fear, not with guilt, and not by trying to change everything in one day, but by choosing one better step and letting that step become part of your life. Maybe tonight, that step is eating your vegetables first. Maybe it is making a cup of hibiscus tea. Maybe it is replacing a processed evening snack with a small handful of walnuts. Maybe it is looking at the oil in your kitchen with fresh eyes. It does not have to be dramatic to matter. It just has to begin. Because when you take action to control high blood pressure, you help lower your risk of heart disease and stroke. And that is not a small thing. It is one of the most important gifts you can give yourself in the years ahead. So, before you move on with your day, choose one habit. Just one. And say to yourself, this is where I start. Not next week. Not after the next appointment. Not when life becomes less busy. Now. And if this message spoke to you, share it with someone you care about. Because there is a very good chance that someone else in your life is living with high blood pressure quietly, and may need this reminder too. And one final thing, do not stop or change your prescribed medication on your own. Lifestyle changes matter, and they can help a great deal, but they work best when they are part of a bigger plan that includes your healthcare team and the treatment your doctor recommends. Your body is still listening, your blood vessels are still responding, and it is not too late to give your heart a little more support, one day at a time.